Hello and welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. I'm Matt Adams recapping the Colts' 23-20 overtime loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. Not a pretty one, really. I thought the Colts could win this game, and they could have. It's just they didn't make enough plays at the end of the game, and the onus falls both on the offense and the defense here. Now, I think in the second half, fourth quarter, especially in the end of the overtime period, really onto the offense, because what you had was 4 straight 3-and-outs to end this game. And the Indianapolis Colts had been the number one offense in the league. They had been able to move the ball pretty much at will whenever they needed to. Many teams had trouble containing Jonathan Taylor, but the Colts just didn't give it to him enough down the stretch. And when they did, you have a 3rd-and-1 play in overtime, and you try to get Taylor around on the edge, and there's just nothing there. And then you end up having to punt to give the ball back to the Chiefs. All they have to do is score a field goal to win the game in overtime there. And just a lot of warning signs here for this Colts team, because since that Pittsburgh game, they've now lost 2 out of 3. We've had Daniel Jones he didn't get sacked and he didn't turn the ball over this time against the Chiefs, but they were able to contain the Colts on offense. Receivers couldn't get separation. Jones couldn't find enough time to find guys, and he made some questionable throws. One that he threw into what was essentially triple coverage to Tyler Warren, trying to force the ball in there. And the only reason that ball didn't get intercepted was because the 2 Kansas City defenders who were in that location when he threw the ball banged into each other, and neither of them could corral the football. So it was just a really ugly day for the Colts offense. I think Jones was under 200 yards for the first time this season. He did throw a couple of touchdowns. He had a really nice touchdown throw to Michael Pittman Jr. He had a great one to Drew Ogletree as well. That was a really tough throw and a great catch by Ogletree on that one. But just in general, it was not a good day for the Indianapolis Colts. Now let's look at where we stand in the AFC South. And, maybe for some, this is sort of the appetizer, this Kansas City Chiefs game, because really the big one for the Colts is next week. It's a home game. It's an interdivisional one against the Houston Texans. The Texans have come on quite a bit. They're probably expecting C.J. Stroud to play. They're better quarterback so far this season, and that has been, they're at 6-5 now. A win gets them real close to the Colts. The Colts, by virtue of an overtime win for the Jacksonville Jaguars and that loss in overtime from the Colts to the Chiefs, now they just have a 1-game lead on the FC South. Now, the good news is that the Colts did distinguish themselves early in the season. They built themselves a little bit of a cushion, but Jacksonville, after a rough stretch, has kind of rebounded. The Texans had a terrible start to the season, and they're kind of back in the mix now too. And especially with, 4 of the last games for the Colts will be divisional games against those teams, so they will have some time and opportunity to make up some ground on the Colts. Conversely, the Colts have the chance to, get those wins and get some distance, but right now, not great. And then, we've seen in the AFC, we've seen the picture shift now. Broncos were on a bye week this week. Had the Colts won, they would have retained their tiebreaker over the Broncos. But since the Broncos now have a better record than the Colts, they're now up ahead of them in the standings. And then the Patriots at 10-2, they'll have their bye week in a couple of weeks. They continue to win as well. And then you see the Baltimore Ravens sneaking back into that 4th spot, as it was foretold that Baltimore would work its way back into things after a horrible start for them. The Steelers have faltered. They've had some injuries, and it hasn't helped them that much. So they've now fallen out of the playoff picture. But you do see the Houston Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs right there, right in the mix, as the Buffalo Bills have sort of faltered as well. And it's not necessarily a pretty picture right now for the Indianapolis Colts. But again, win some ball games, string together some more wins, kind of get out of this funk that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, and they should be okay. I do think that defense is going to be good. It does stink the DeForest Buckner's not there. I think they would have had a much better run defense against the Chiefs if Buck had been in the game, because you did see Kareem Hunt go over 100 yards. It took him about 30 carries to do so. But, when they needed to get some yardage in key situations, they were able to get it. And, maybe if Buck's in there, they're able to run those plays too and have success there. But you just feel like if Buck's in those games, that'll help. On the back end, the Colts held up relatively well for much of the game, but you're not going to hold all these receivers down all the time. Mahomes is going to make some plays with his legs, but for a fair amount of the game, the Colts did a very nice job. They confused Mahomes. They made him think about things, have some reservations about where he was going to put the ball a few times, and they were able to also clog up a lot of those lanes in the middle to keep some of those plays from happening and developing. And then they were also getting some pressure on him. Now, Mahomes made a few plays with his legs this game, but for the most part, the Colts defense did its job. Would I have liked to have seen them not give up a couple of those long plays late in the game and the one long play in overtime? Of course, I would have liked to have done that. But they kept the Chiefs out of the end zone. Some of those were some self-inflicted wounds and penalties and stuff like that from Kansas City. But the Colts kept the Chiefs out of the end zone for the most part in this game. They forced them into field goals. And when you're trading touchdowns for field goals, you're going to come out on top there. The problem is then when the offense did get in some situations where they could have scored a touchdown, they could not get back in the end zone. And Colts get just one more score in this game, and they win because the Chiefs can't tie it up at overtime. But it's just kind of the way that things fall, and you're going to hear a lot from Daniel Jones and Shane Steichen this week. We've got to be better. We've got to be better. We've got to be better. So, instead of hearing that from me, let's hear from head coach Shane Steichen.
Obviously very frustrating, not up to our standards today. We got to be better, and it starts with myself. So, go ahead.
Shane, the second half approach, are there some calls you'd like to have back, or just how do you think that played out in the second half?
Yeah, I thought the defense did a great job getting the takeaways. We get a backed up situation, we got to get ourselves out of that situation. That's the 3 and out there, and then we had another 3 and out, and then we had another 3 and out. So anytime you have 3 and outs and you're not moving the ball efficiently, it's going to be hard for anyone to win football games, and we got to be better. I got to be better.
On two of those 3 and outs, it was all passes. Would you have liked to go on to Taylor more than you did?
I'll go back and look at it, but yeah, I think the backed up one, we ran it and lost 2 yards, got us in a second pass situation first, and then the next one we threw it, then we dumped it down to Taylor on a screen, got us to a 3rd and 3, didn't convert there, and then we had the other one, we had an RPO where we threw it there to Tree, and then obviously they stopped us on the 3rd and 1, and so yeah, we got to be better. I got to be better.
A couple of those decisions late on, some of those, I think there was maybe 4th and 1, 4th and 3, maybe one at the end of the game and another in overtime. Is there any consideration to go for either of those? Does that go through your mind before you ultimately?
Yeah, we always have those conversations before the game happens, and then in the game, in the moment, and yeah, those conversations go through your mind.
What ultimately you felt like made you punt the ball, particularly the one at the end of the game on the Chiefs side of the field?
Right there in the overtime, you're saying?
No, it's still in regulation.
Oh, late fourth quarter. Yeah, just try to back them up there. We had the lead. We had the lead. We're up 3. Why not? So if we don't get it there, they're going to be in great field position. So that's why.
What do you think, I guess, led some of their defensive success in the second half with 6 points from you all?
Yeah, credit to Kansas City's defense. They did a good job, but, we got to be better. I got to be better for the guys.
No sacks for Daniel today, but felt like he was maybe rushing it a little bit in the second half. What did you see from him?
I thought he played pretty good ball. I'd have to go back and look at it. Yeah.
He had a couple of runs. I think they were both double-digit runs, but it looked like, especially the first one, he was heading toward your guys' sideline. Looked like he maybe let up a little bit. I didn't know if you felt like he was dealing with a little bit of pain or discomfort from his fibular injury that he.
Yeah, the one he ran to our sidelines, that was a 3rd and 1, and it was a first down. He got the first down and got out of bounds.
Shane, what did you think was out of sync offensively? Because we've seen your offense long
Yeah.
enough to see what it looks like, and that's not what it typically looks like.
Yeah, I think being efficient on 1st and 10, I thought at times we did that a little bit, but we didn't do it enough in the second half. It wasn't good enough, and it starts with myself. I think we got to be better in all phases, run and pass, moving the football.
With the exception of that one run, they kept JT pretty much contained. Were they doing anything unexpected, or what did you see there with his struggles?
I don't know. I think we had some backer run-throughs is what it looked like on a few of those. We got to go back and look at those and get those cleaned up, and that starts with me.
Obviously, hindsight's 20/20, but does it feel imbalanced at all there late when you have so many passes versus runs?
I don't know. I mean, I felt there was a lot of stuff that I wanted to get called that I felt good about in the pass game, and we just weren't efficient doing it, and it starts with me.
Penalties, you had some, I don't know what the number was, but there was some huge ones.
Yeah, it was 11 for 83. It wasn't good enough. We got to get those cleaned up. Those are the self-inflicted wounds, that we can't have, and we got to get them cleaned up.
All right. Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
And that was Indianapolis head coach Shane Steichen after a tough 23-20 overtime loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. In this game, the Colts had a 20-9 lead late in the game, and they let the Chiefs come back on them and score. And really, again, I'm going to talk a little bit mostly here about the offense because Jonathan Taylor couldn't find any running room. The Chiefs had a game plan that was certainly centered on making sure that Taylor, who had been kind of a dark horse MVP candidate, really for this team, just did not have a very good day. Just not a lot of running room there. 16 carries for 58 yards for him. He did have a nice long 27-yard run, but the Colts were not able to capitalize on that play for him. And he did have a couple of catches for 8 yards as well. And in key situations when the Colts needed to pick up a 3rd and short, they just couldn't do it, whether it was handing the ball off to Taylor or trying to pass. It just wasn't there. I mean, Jones had Josh Downs wide open in a play that would have continued to drive that I think ended up with a field goal, and he was just unable to find him. He got some pressure in his face a little bit there, but the ball was way off target. And maybe there was a miscommunication between him and what Downs saw on that play or whatever, but the throw was just nowhere close to him. Tried to hit Pittman on another short where he got, this was kind of over the middle, and he got some pressure again and could not get an accurate throw on that one either. And then there was the one to Tyler Warren, as I mentioned earlier, where Warren was essentially triple covered and tried to get the ball to him, and Jones was very lucky there that ball was not intercepted. But it wasn't all bad. I mean, Ashton Doolin had a nice catch and run for 48 yards that set up a score. Tyler Warren, 5 catches for 45 yards. 5 catches for 27 yards for Pittman this week. Alec Pierce, pretty quiet, had a 26-yard catch. Couldn't really get the ball to Pierce much in this game. Just a couple targets for him. They did a nice job on him. Just 2 receptions and 10 yards for Downs on 6 targets this week. Did have some contributions from some guys that we don't normally get involved there, and Doolin's one of them. You see a play or two here and there to him. Drew Ogletree hadn't caught a pass all year. He got 2 of them in this game, including a touchdown. So really nice body control, getting the feet down, getting the touchdown there. And then Mo Alley Cox, gets rewarded with 1 catch for 9 yards for the Colts this week. And it's just such a tough game to swallow there because Indianapolis had the advantage almost the entirety of this football game. They were the aggressors. They got a couple of turnovers on defense. They were able to turn some of those one of those turnovers into a score. Latu with a great play tips the ball, gets the interception, and darn near gets himself into the end zone, but the Colts were able to convert with the touchdown to Pittman a couple plays later on that one. That got them an early lead, and so they were able to stop Kansas City early, and they held them to field goals, and then the offense just sputtered. And I was surprised by a couple of things here, and some of it has to just go with decision-making from Shane Steichen because he's so aggressive. And I know the Kansas City defense was playing well, and there's a reason that you're in 4th down because you're not picking up the yardage to get into a short situation, or you're not able to pick up the 1st down on 3rd down. But they had a couple that were near midfield and with 4th and short, and we saw them convert this many times this season in other games. Against Denver, some really good defenses able to situationally do that. And Steichen elected to punt a couple of those times. And sometimes you're like, go for it. And then you don't get it and you're like, why did we go for it? Oh, that was so dumb, And that could have been one of those situations. But you feel like with the game on the line, the offense not doing much, the defense has been playing well, but they've also been on the field a ton because the offense has been ineffective. You may as well roll the dice, especially if the defense is playing well enough. You think, maybe they'll hold them to a field goal anyway, even if you give them good field position. But I'm just surprised by that because Steichen has been very aggressive in a lot of these 4th and short, less than 4 yard situations as you get near midfield, sometimes even before midfield, and decided not to go for it this week. And that just kind of something that stuck out to me a little bit. I think I heard the phrase, read a lot of people kind of say, playing not to lose instead of to win this week. And I don't know if it has something to do, maybe that injury that popped up for Jones was a little bit more significant than we thought, or just he didn't feel confident with what they were able to run. But, just kind of a rough game. As for Jones, he was on a heater to start things off, and then he just tailed off and complete many of his passes down the stretch, was off target, under pressure a little bit. And then even a couple of times when he ran, like the one first down, he just sort of jogged out of bounds. And I was just kind of wondering, is the leg bothering him a little bit there? Fibula injury is kind of what he came up with there. And so I just started to wonder about that a little bit. And then he had another scramble. It was a longer scramble, got him a first down. He slid, but it just didn't look like he was going full bore there. So I don't know, but far be it from me to try to presuppose there. So let's listen in to Colts quarterback Daniel Jones.
Yeah, just didn't execute in some key situations. Got to do a better job, I think, overall in our execution, and certainly I have to do a better job in handling all that stuff. So tough to have a stretch like that towards the end of the game.
What do you think shifted in the second half for you?
I'm not sure. I think just plays here and there we didn't execute as well as we should have, and some opportunities didn't take advantage of. So we'll go back and look at the tape and see where we could have been better.
Is there anything you noticed, look-wise, scheme-wise, from half to half that they did that looked notably different for you guys second half and overtime?
I don't think there was anything. I don't think there was anything markedly different they were doing. I think a lot of the same stuff that they did all game and that we were prepared for going into the game.
You didn't take any sacks today, but did you feel the pressure at all as the game went on? It felt like maybe you were throwing a little bit more off your back foot than we're used to seeing you do.
Yeah, I think. They're an aggressive defense and they bring pressure and trying to get the ball out. Quick.
Your fibula injury that landed you on the injury report on Thursday. Are you feel like you're less than 100%? I know you ran off a couple big runs. I think one first half, one the second half. Couldn't tell on some of those if you were less than 100% speed wise or trying to let up and not go full throttle there. What you feel on this?
I'm good enough to play and feel good out there.
Daniel, I know a loss is a loss, but is it even more frustrating when you realize, like you said, you had plays there and you're just an inch or two off, a little too, had a couple drops perhaps? Does that add to the frustration?
I think you gotta be on it, and me personally, I think you gotta be accurate. Like we talked about, they're bringing pressure and trying to heat you up, and sometimes it happens a little quicker than what you expect. You still gotta be accurate, find a way to make the play work, and I gotta do a better job of that.
What makes them tough as a defense? Is just the talent on the outside with their corners?
Corners are good, yeah. I think corners are good, played well today. I think, obviously they got a pass rush and guys inside who can make a lot of plays, and I think their scheme's really good.
What kind of frustration sets in after you don't get a first down after the third and fourth? A lot of freaking outs there.
Frustrated for sure. Frustrated, but you try to stay into what's next and kind of what's coming up and how you prepare for that. So I don't think anyone got out of the game or out of the moment or let that affect us going forward.
And that was Daniel Jones talking after making his post-game comments in the 23-20 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs in overtime. And like I said, you heard it from Steichen, you heard it from Jones. we weren't good enough. We've got to be better. And there's probably nothing worse to hear, I think, from a fan standpoint, than to hear those phrases, because you're just like, well, execution should have been there. Like, you guys had a week to prepare for this game. You're coming off the bye week, should be well rested. But the result is not what you want it to be, and that's a Colts loss, and it's taking them out of the top space there in the AFC. And a little more tenuous lead on the AFC South, although, the Colts will have a chance. They'll have plenty of chances. They've got 4 games coming up against the Jaguars and the Texans to hopefully, get back on track. Let us take another look at those AFC South standings as we refer to that. 8-3, the Colts there right now. Jacksonville Jaguars nipping at their heels right now, 7-4, coming off of an overtime win for them. Houston Texans at 6-5. That's a team that's had a very bad start to the season. Don't even really need to mention the Titans, but I guess they are in the AFC South division, even though they have zero chance of. Well, I can't say zero chance, but they have very little chance of winning the division or making the playoffs. It would take complete other collapses from the rest of the field in order for that to happen. So, defensively, I thought the Colts did some good things. You had Latu with the tip and the interception. The team had 4 sacks on the day. They were split amongst a bunch of different players because you had some half sacks in there with Grover Stewart and Kwity Paye, and then Austin Ajike, and then Tommy Adebawore with half a sack as well, and then Latu with a sack, and then Neville Gallimore with a sack. And they were never like huge yardage loss sacks, but they were able to put some pressure on Mahomes and confuse him at times. So, you got to give the defense some credit for that. Really did not have their wide receivers involved until late, but then they did get involved, and specifically Rashee Rice, 8 catches for 141 yards for him. And then on the ground game, Kareem Hunt, 30 carries for 104 yards and a touchdown there for the Chiefs. And it was their only touchdown of the day. They had the one touchdown, and it was Kareem Hunt. So, was it a spectacular performance from the defense? No. They gave up some plays that they would rather not have given up, but it was a good enough performance for them to win this football game. Because if the offense just does something in its last 3 or 4 possessions, game probably doesn't go into overtime. Colts have enough of a cushion that they can't blow it, but they did. They led 20-9. And then they gave up the field goal at the end of regulation. It was a good goal line stand, though, right? To keep the Chiefs out of the end zone, at least to give your team a chance in overtime. And then, the Colts won the toss, and people are of 2 minds about this. It used to be that, if the overtime rule, you got the ball, you scored a touchdown, you won. So you wanted the ball first all the time. But then they've changed it so that each team gets a possession. And so if you give up a touchdown, then you get a chance to kind of counter that. The Colts decided to take the ball first. I think of it in the college football realm. You like to have the other offense go first because then you know what you are required to do on offense. I mean, if the Colts hold the Chiefs, if the Colts make the Chiefs punt or they hold them to a field goal, then touchdown wins the game. If they hold them scoreless, they make the punt, then a field goal wins the game. That's what the Chiefs were able to take advantage of. Different strokes for different folks, and I know that Steichen does have a lot of confidence in the offense and in his players, and I think that's a good thing. I think you would rather have that than the alternative, probably, but just a tough call and just not a great game for the Indianapolis Colts. Well, that'll do it for this game recap. Again, the final score 23-20 for the Indianapolis Colts. They lose at Arrowhead Stadium to the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs work their way back into the playoff picture. Of course they do, right? They're the Chiefs. You can't kill them, right? They're always going to do something, it feels like. So they're back into things at 6-5. We'll see where their season goes. For the Colts, probably the game of the year right now, coming up this week. It's against the Houston Texans. A lot on the line, a lot of AFC South implications on the line here. You start thinking about tie-breaking situations, and you also talk about the top scoring defense in the NFL. You look at what the Chiefs did to the Colts this week. and you look at what the Steelers did to the Colts a couple weeks ago, the Falcons, in Berlin, as far as getting after the quarterback and that sort of thing, Texans, whole different level of pass rush and defense for that team. So we'll have to see how that goes. Dave Griffiths and Mike Chappell and I will all have a preview of that on the next edition of the Colts Blue Zone podcast. Thank you for watching and for listening.